Okay, welcome to this explainer. We're jumping right in today because we need to talk about a financial reality happening right in your own backyard at Ledgewood Village. Look, if you're a homeowner there, I get it. It is so easy to just tune out association politics. You just kind of assume the board and the management company have everything handled using standard, everyday business practices. But today? Well, today we are stripping all of that away. We're cutting out the emotion, the neighborhood gossip, the personalities, all of it. We're going to look strictly at the raw mechanics of how your reserve funds are actually being managed. And more importantly, we're going to break down exactly how major capital projects should be handled in a healthy association and how you can step up to protect your hard-earned equity. So let's just start with a super simple question. Would you ever hire a contractor for your personal home, say to replace your roof or get your kitchen, and agree to an arrangement where there's absolutely no estimate, no competitive bids, and just an open-ended hourly billing rate? Seriously, think about that for a second. If a guy stood in your driveway and was like, hey, I can't tell you what this is going to cost, just pay me by the hour until I decide I'm done, you'd instantly recognize that as a massive financial risk, right? You would literally show them the door. The absurdity of it just clicks instantly when it's your own personal checking account on the line. Well, to put that into perspective, take a look at this massive $165,000 plus figure, because that is exactly what Ledgewood Village is facing right now with its current siding and carpentry project. I mean, this isn't some hypothetical worst-case scenario we're dreaming up. This is a real six-figure capital project happening right now, without a fixed-price bid, without competing estimates, and operating on a totally open-ended checkbook. And here's the thing, when a project of this massive scale lacks basic cost controls, your monthly dues, or worse, those surprise special assessments, well, they become the only safety net to cover those runaway costs. Now, to really understand why this matters so deeply, we have to talk about something called fiduciary duty. Now, sure, condo board members are just volunteer homeowners, but legally speaking, they act as fiduciaries. That means they carry a strict legal and financial obligation to be prudent with your money. And let's be real, volunteer homeowners rarely have professional construction management backgrounds, right? So standard industry practice says they absolutely must use structural guardrails. That means doing things like hiring independent project managers, or at the bare minimum, getting multiple bids before spending a single dime. Handing out a six-figure contract without a fixed price bid or competing estimates, that is a textbook violation of this basic fiduciary standard. Because simply put, ignorance of construction nuances does not protect an association from financial disaster. And if we look directly at Ledgewood Village's own declarations, specifically Article 2, Section 5, we can see the exact legal definition of common expenses. This is so crucial for anyone sitting there thinking, this is just a management issue, it doesn't really affect me. These expenditures are funded entirely by the assessments you pay. When the board spends money from the reserve fund, they aren't just tapping into some abstract corporate pool of cash. No, they are spending your prepaid equity. Literally, it is your money on the line, directly, every single time a check is cut. Okay, so how does standard industry practice actually stack up against what we're calling the Ledgewood method? Well, normally, a responsible board is going to solicit at least 3 independent contractor estimates for any major capital expenditure. This is just standard operating procedure. It establishes fair market value, it lets you compare the scopes of work, and it gives the board the leverage they need to negotiate competitive pricing. Skipping this entire process, which is exactly what's happening here, with 0 quotes and an open hourly rate, is wildly outside standard business practice. It really points to a severe breakdown in just regular, basic governance. When we break down the math on this, it becomes incredibly clear why open-ended hourly rates are just exceptionally dangerous for your wallet. Think of it this way. In a standard fixed-price contract, the contractor holds the financial risk. If they work slowly or, they make a bunch of mistakes, that eats directly into their own profit margin. So they have a built-in natural incentive to work efficiently. But an open-ended time and materials or hourly structure, that completely flips the risk directly onto you. Suddenly, the contractor has absolutely zero incentive to be efficient. Every mistake, every delay, every slow Tuesday afternoon, it all just gets billed straight to the association. Now, you might hear some arguments floating around the neighborhood that siding jobs just have to be billed hourly because, hey, you never know what you're going to find underneath. But the source material makes a really clear distinction here. The only time hourly rates are generally acceptable in exterior carpentry is for unforeseen, hidden structural rot that you discover after you open up the walls. And honestly, even then, it's usually governed by a pre-agreed not-to-exceed cap. A reputable contractor should absolutely always be able to provide a comprehensive, line-item estimate for a clearly defined scope of surface work, like ripping off and replacing exterior siding. And you really have to listen to the actual reasoning given by the property manager and siding contractor, MTR, at the last annual meeting. When they were asked point blank why there were no estimates provided for this massive project, the response was literally, it would be higher than the cost per hour, because he would be estimating so that he made money. I mean, just think about the logic there for a second. Of course, a fixed price estimate includes a profit margin. That is fundamentally how the entire contracting industry works. By refusing to provide one, the contractor is basically guaranteeing themselves a blank check. They successfully shift 100% of the inefficiency risk onto the association and entirely sidestep any normal financial accountability. So this brings us to what is really a massive foundational conflict of interest. Look, a property manager's primary job is to protect your wallet. They're hired to be this independent, objective watchdog that holds vendors and contractors accountable for you. But when your property manager is the highest paid contractor pocketing these six-figure checks, their financial incentive is now directly opposing yours. Every single dollar saved for the association is a dollar taken straight out of their own pocket. Combine that with the fact that they're sitting on board meetings and they know exactly how much money is sitting in your reserve funds, well, you have a textbook environment for classic self-dealing. And all of this creates what experts in governance call a captured board. Here's how it works. By convincing the board of directors that you simply cannot give an estimate for a siding project, which, by the way, is a claim that is demonstrably false in the wider construction industry, the vendor effectively eliminates all market competition. When your board members start repeating these false talking points to defend the contractor, rather than demanding competitive bids to protect the homeowners, they aren't acting as independent fiduciaries anymore. They've been captured. And that leaves your collective reserve funds completely unprotected from overspending. All right, so how do we actually fix this? Well, if you start asking normal, responsible business questions, you might suddenly find yourself labeled a quote-unquote troublemaker who's just trying to stir up drama. But you have to instantly strip your personal ego out of the equation and shift the narrative. We need to stop treating this like some petty neighborhood grievance and start acting like an auditor. Focus entirely on the objective math, the contracting mechanics, and that basic fiduciary duty owed to your home equity. Document everything meticulously. Because wanting basic cost controls on a six-figure capital project, that doesn't make you a troublemaker, it makes you a highly responsible, engaged homeowner. I want to leave you with a final thought today to wrap up this explainer, and I actually strongly encourage you to ask your neighbors this exact same thing. When the oversight system breaks down this severely, the power shifts right back to the owners, but only if you wake up and decide to actually act. So ask yourself, if your property manager is actively preventing competitive bids and your elected board is just allowing it to happen, exactly whose investment are they protecting? Because I can tell you right now, it certainly isn't yours. Thanks for joining me for this explainer, and I really hope this analysis empowers you to step up and start asking the hard questions about your community's financial future.